Millions of dollars are pouring into Oregon's race for governor, a bunch of it coming out of the pocket of one guy, Nike co-founder Phil Knight. $1 million to Christine Drazen after nearly $4 million to Betsy Johnson.
He really does not want Tina Kotek to be governor.
In a state with no campaign contribution limits, will all that money make a difference?
He's basically placed a lot of bets against Democratic candidates over the last couple of races.
And with a month to go, can Democrats keep their stronghold in Oregon?
Well, this is not a normal election, and we've got some time to have some more twists and turns in this race.
Here's the story. I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. Oregon's been a stronghold for Democrats for nearly 40 years. A Republican has not held the governor's office since the 1980s. There's no doubt that this is still a blue state, but voters on all sides are not happy with how things are going. And with three strong candidates running for governor, this might be a year of change. Recent polling shows Republican Christine Drazen with a slight lead over Democrat Tina Kotek, and big money is following that polling, coming from donors who want to influence the outcome of the race, including Nike co-founder Phil Knight. That is our big story tonight. We told you earlier this week how Phil Knight increased his donations to Betsy Johnson's campaign by another $2 million. She can use it since she's running unaffiliated. She doesn't have the same money coming in from the national political groups. But just a few days later, he sent $1 million to Republican Christine Drazen. So, does that mean that he's giving up on Johnson's campaign? According to our favorite political analysts, not really. They say he really does not want Tina Kotek to win, though, and he'll fund just about anyone that he thinks can beat her next month. Recent polling shows Christine Drazen with a slight lead over Tina Kotek and Betsy Johnson way back in third place, by a lot. According to a poll from DHM Research released in late September, about 32% of voters said they would likely vote for Christine Drazen, 31% for Tina Kotek, and only 18% of voters backing Betsy Johnson. An Emerson College poll released this week is similar. Johnson has only 19% of likely voters going for her, compared to Drazen's 36% and Tina Kotek with 34%. Our political experts agree Phil Knight's money is following the polling.
Well, what it says is that the people who have got lots of money to spend are looking for signs as to who the winner is going to be. They certainly don't want to look stupid and back a loser or back someone that at the poll right now, if you just watch particularly a poll by Emerson College, it looks like Drazen and Kotek are the horses that are at the front of the pack and that Betsy Johnson is back significantly. Some people who look at these races say it's just begun and she's got a lot of time. She can make this up. But she doesn't have a natural constituency. Their natural voters normally fall into a Democratic or Republican camp, and her campaign depends on a campaign fiction that says she's the Goldilocks candidate in the middle between two extremes. So far, that message hasn't really resonated with voters. So the question is whether or not the money she's got can make up that. Phil Knight, although I don't know how to read his mind on these things because $1 million to him is probably different than $1 million to other people. But he's saying, wait a minute, I want anybody but Tina Kotek. He's basically placed a lot of bets against Democratic candidates over the last couple of races. He did support, I think, Kitzhaber in one of the races, but by and large, he's been supporting somebody other than the Democratic candidate for governor. So it's pretty natural that he would put his money down. And as soon as he sees some polls that say, wait a minute, there's a chance that Drazen could win, he's saying, well, maybe my money could make the difference to kind of push her over the top.
Interesting stuff. Phil Knight has backed Republican candidates in the past, by the way. In 2018, he gave $2.5 million to Newt Buehler, who ultimately lost that race to Kate Brown. So it seems like he's upping the ante this time. Here's Republican strategist Rebecca Tweed.
You know, Mr. Knight is a staunch supporter of Betsy Johnson. I think she represents exactly the type of leader that he's looking for in the state. He also knows polling. He understands where those numbers are. You know, one thing to think about and a perspective that I've taken since I saw those numbers is it's not really $1 million towards Drazen or 3.7 towards Betsy. It's 4.75 against Tina Kotek. And I think that's really the message he's going to send. I mean, he always wants to back winners. He tries. He's done that in House races. He did it with Newt's campaign that I was involved in. Certainly he's done it here, but my takeaway is he really does not want Tina Kotek to be governor.
Ultimately, both of our experts agree with a month left in the race, anything could still happen, and it's going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out.
I do think it's remarkable. I just think it's great that we have not a Republican, but that we have really strong women running and that it's this competitive. That's exactly what politics should be, right? Nobody likes a blowout. Nobody likes something to seem like you've got one credible candidate and one that's not.
By the way, where's all that money going? Ads. If you thought you're seeing a lot of political ads now, buckle up. There's a lot more to come. And speaking of political ads, earlier this week we talked about political ads and the fact that TV stations really cannot refuse them. Politicians can say pretty much whatever they want in those ads. We cannot censor them. Several of you did not like that and took us to task, urging us to dig in and become fact checkers on the ads. Eleanor wrote in to say, you could take a whole show or two and go over the facts claimed in multiple ads and what the truth is. You don't have to endorse anyone, just show whether they are telling the truth or misinforming. Fair enough, Eleanor, and everyone else who emailed or called. We are not going to use the entire show tonight, but we are going to start fact-checking ads beginning right now. The first ad we'll focus on involves the 5th Congressional District, where Democrat Jamie McLeod Skinner is battling Republican Lori Chavez-DeRemer. Tonight we'll focus on an ad targeting Chavez-DeRemer. Monday night we'll look at one targeting McLeod Skinner. You've probably seen this ad paid for by the campaign arm of congressional Democrats, which targets Chavez-DeRemer's stance on abortion. The part that stood out to us involves her reaction to word that Roe v. Wade would be overturned.
And Lori Chavez-DeRemer said she was, quote, encouraged by it.
Okay, so you heard that. The ad said she was encouraged by it. I checked to see if she actually had a tweet out there like that. Sure enough, she does indeed. So that claim is accurate. Let's take a look at the next part.
So encouraged, in fact, Chavez-DeRemer wants to criminalize abortion at just 6 weeks. 6 weeks.
I checked into that claim as well, and it is also accurate. It's based off this story in the Statesman Journal newspaper, which asked candidates back in May for their response to the potential overturning of Roe v. Wade. Chavez-DeRemer is quoted as saying, "I would be in favor of passing legislation like the heartbeat bill." She later tweeted out her newspaper statement and thanked the newspaper, the Statesman Journal. That term, by the way, heartbeat bill, is somewhat controversial. Pro-life supporters say a heartbeat can be detected at 6 weeks. Many in the medical world say that's nonsense, that it happens much later. Regardless, several states, including Idaho, have passed what they call heartbeat bills, and it prohibits abortion after 6 weeks. There's also a heartbeat bill that's been introduced in Congress, and that bill does not make exceptions for rape or incest. Okay, so for the key parts of the ad claiming that Chavez-DeRemer supports severe restrictions on abortion, at least as of May, we find that to be true. Which is why it was so stunning that the candidate insisted yesterday during the taping of Straight Talk with Laurel Porter that she did not support that at all. Let's watch the beginning of the discussion. And by the way, watch the way the candidate pivots right off the bat, avoiding Laurel's specific question.
You have said you support the Supreme Court's overturning of Roe v. Wade. If you're in Congress and it comes up for a vote, would you vote for a federal ban on abortion?
Yeah, this question has been asked to me so many times. I never want to see this on the floor of Congress. I think exactly where it came back to the states. I trust Oregonians to make this decision, and we know it's protected here in Oregon. I support access to abortion in the first trimester. That has never changed. Of course, for rape, incest, and the life of the mother always should be protected. Criminalizing women is a non-starter, and a national ban is not something I ever want to see on the floor of Congress.
And you've said in debates that
That, my friends, is a professional level pivot. The question was, would you vote for a federal ban? The answer was, I never want to see that on the floor of Congress. That's not an answer, that is a pivot. But we're only just getting started. Watch this next exchange.
And you've said in debates that you support a common sense approach to abortion, but in May you tweeted that you support the heartbeat bill, which would trigger a ban on abortion at 6 weeks, which is a time when a lot of women don't even know they're pregnant. Do you stand by that support for the heartbeat bill?
Well, there was a conversation about what could this look like. you know, if we had to have this conversation. And I know that there's been conversation about the pain bill. There's been conversations about, you know, the 24-week when a baby cannot survive without the mom. There's all those conversations. I think the exact thing that should be right here in the hands of Oregonians, and that's where I would like to keep it and not have it on the floor of Congress.
Well, she certainly has her talking points down, doesn't she? That's a second really good pivot. But the question was, do you support a heartbeat bill? And the answer was, I don't want it on the floor of Congress. Now, something you may not know about my friend Laurel Porter, who is conducting the interview, she's the nicest, kindest, sweetest person that you're ever going to meet. But if you're trying to dodge her question, she is the kindest pit bull that you'll ever meet. Watch her pin down Chavez DeRemer.
I'm not quite understanding what you're saying, but would you support a heartbeat bill? Do you think that pregnancy or abortion should be banned after 6 weeks?
Yeah, I would not support a ban in Congress at all, a federal ban. I want Oregonians to have this decision. This is where I trust that.
But it ever came up in Oregon, would you support that?
A vote in Oregon from the legislator?
Well, would you ever support a ban on abortion at 6 weeks or after?
No, I think women should have access up until the first trimester.
All the way up till 12 weeks?
Yes, the first trimester.
So you changed your mind on what you tweeted?
No, I did not change my mind. I have always felt this way. That question was asked on a conversation about if this ever came to the floor of 6 weeks, what does the conversation look like?
I think we showed the tweet, though. I think you said support the bill, the heartbeat bill in May, which would seem different than what you're saying now.
No, it's not different. My position has never changed, Laurel.
Just up to 12 weeks.
Oh, yes, I think women have asked that access. I trust women. I trust Oregonians to make that decision.
Well, let's jump to homelessness because 35 years ago.
Oh, yeah, she was very eager to move on to anything else. Circling back to the beginning, was the ad accurate? Yes, it represents what Chavez DeRemer said last May. She might make the argument now that based on what she said to Laurel, it's no longer accurate, but then she would have to admit that she's changed her position, and it's clear she does not want to do that. Here's my opinion on this. One thing that people who hate politicians hate about them is the sense that they'll say anything in the moment to get support from people they are trying to reach. They hate that politicians seem to have no backbone, no moral fiber, no principles that they stick with, and no ability to tell the truth about what they really believe, even when it's not popular. Politicians, in my opinion, you can believe whatever you want, and you can change your mind as you learn more or you think things over. But what you cannot do is change your position and then pretend the new one is the position that you've always had. Because as we just demonstrated, it's really easy these days to fact check things. And when you are found out, you're going to lose some credibility. And voters wonder what other positions you've changed in the past or will change in the future. Okay, that's my take. Yours? What do you think? Send me an email. Our address is thestory@kgw.com or call and leave me a message, 503-226-5090. I look forward to hearing from you. All right, so we've learned that ads are not the best way to get educated about candidates, but what about the trusty voters pamphlet? A lot of you told us that you do use that booklet to determine who to vote for and which measures to support. And by the way, this year's pamphlet comes out next week. Jan asked us earlier this week if candidates don't have to tell the truth in their TV ads, what about in the voters pamphlet? Oh, that is a great question, Jan. Given the amount of misinformation and disinformation surrounding elections, we want to make one thing clear. Official information that's in that pamphlet, like instructions on when and how to vote, well, that stuff 100% accurate and you can trust it. There's no questioning about that. But let's talk about candidate statements. Are they fact-checked? The Elections Division says, no, not so much. They told us candidates are responsible for the statements they make in the voters pamphlet. In order to avoid subjectivity, the Elections Division does not edit them. However, it is illegal to lie about certain types of information. If you're a candidate, the Elections Division does verify basic information like the spelling of your name. They also verify your endorsements by checking with the endorsing organization. If it turns out you lied about an endorsement, the Elections Division will take that endorsement out of the statement. It's also illegal to lie about your occupation, your educational background, and government experience. So what's the bottom line? The voters pamphlet is another tool to help you figure out who to vote for. But keep in mind, candidate statements, just like political ads, they can include inaccuracies and false information. And again, it's worth repeating. Official information in the pamphlet, instructions on how and when and where to vote, that's 100% accurate and trustworthy. Well, it's never a good feeling when you're shaken awake by an earthquake in Oregon. Luckily, today's wasn't so bad, but it was strong enough for a lot of you to feel it, and it's a good reminder to be ready for the big one. We'll have more when the story returns. Did you feel the earthquake early this morning? I didn't. It was a magnitude 4.4 earthquake, and it happened just before 6 this morning. It was centered near Sweet Home, and a lot of you tell us that you did feel the shaking. Fawn from Lebanon wrote in to say, felt the earthquake this morning at approximately 5:52. It woke me from my sleep. Windows were rattling and there was shaking. Really startled me awake. And Timothy noticed the quake when his bird started acting up. He wrote, my bird Cappuccino went nuts. Every time there's an earthquake, she alerts me. She lost a lot of her tail feathers. Timothy, we hope that Cappuccino's okay. And Crystal told us, I live in Silverton, was watching your channel when I felt the earthquake. It shook, then it shook some more, and then it shook again. Have not felt one of those in years. Hopefully won't feel another one for many years to come. Hey, we agree. We hope that we don't feel that for many years as well. People reported feeling it all the way into parts of Portland and across the Columbia River into Vancouver. If you felt it, you can report it to the U.S. Geological Survey. They actually keep track of experiences and damage reports to see how far it spread. Now, this earthquake was nowhere near the big one. That's the huge earthquake we're expecting or worrying about happening here in the Pacific Northwest. It could come sometime in the next decades or minutes, I guess. Could be 9.0, and that will be truly awful. Right now, there are no reports of any damage or injuries from today's earthquake. We did get surveillance video from a grocery store in Lacombe, Oregon. You can see the shaking rattled some of the bottles on the shelves, but it did not even knock them off, thank heavens. I think it's safe to say we're going to recover from this one. But it's a great wake-up call to make sure that you're ready. Let's bring in our expert Matt Zaffino now for a closer look. Matt?
Hey, thanks so much, Pat. You know what? I did not feel this one either, but I did experience an overnight or an early morning earthquake once when I was living in Salt Lake City. And it woke me up, and it's weird because suddenly, you're sleeping one second, the next minute it's like the bed is bouncing across the floor. It's like, whoa, it's highly disturbing. It just kind of shakes literally our foundation, right? So, as we heard from the experts, this was not the big one. It happened here near Lacombe, Oregon, where that green dot is, southeast of Salem. I also missed that Scotts Mills spring break quake. That was a 5.5 magnitude back in the 90s. You remember that one, Pat? Did you feel that one?
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of it. That was closer to Portland. A lot of people felt that one, and it was an order of magnitude stronger, so it had a more far-reaching effect. But this wasn't the only earthquake in Oregon today. There was one here southeast of the Dalles this afternoon. It was too small, only 1.6 to be felt. Let's widen the map a little bit. You've heard about the Ring of Fire, right? Well, we're going to show you that Ring of Fire. I mean, no fire, but where the earthquakes are. And if you look throughout the western United States, lots of earthquakes over the last 10 days throughout California especially, but also along the Sierra Nevada. And by the way, the size of the circle represents how strong the earthquake was. And so that's the one this morning, which is now more than 24 hours, not 24, but more than 12 hours old. So it's turned green. And again, that was the biggest one that we've had here in the West in the last several days, the last 10 days or so. But let's widen the circle a bit more. And you can see there are earthquakes in the last 10 days clear down to the coast of South America. So that's half of the Ring of Fire. Let's spin around the globe to the other side, and this is the other half of the ring. So really, the Ring of Fire, where the earthquakes are most likely to happen, extends from the Western Pacific up through Japan, up through Alaska, and then back down here on the West Coast, because this is where the tectonic plates meet, and that's where you get the most earthquake activity. And really, there's nothing all that unusual about it. If you look at it on a really big scale like this, it's just part of life here on the big blue marble. Pat?
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Very cool. Always learning stuff. Hey, for more than 2 years, people in Portland have been demanding the return of the Thompson elk statue, even going so far as putting antlers on and pleading with the city council. But are they willing to shell out the money it'll take? We'll have the details when we come back. A Portland landmark is on its way back downtown, and we know a lot of you will be happy to see that. The Thompson Elk Fountain could return as soon as next spring. The statue and the foundation underneath were heavily damaged during the 2020 riots, but Portlanders have demanded its restoration and return. Those plans are in the works, but as Catherine Cook reports, you might have to pay for it.
These images from 2020 mean different things to different people. Some see a Portland landmark burning in the name of social justice. Others see collateral damage from nightly riots. Either way, the Thompson Elk Fountain was damaged enough to be considered unsafe. It's been socked away in secret storage for more than 2 years now, while the city figures out what to do with it, when, and how much it'll cost.
The fountain is made up of 50 pieces. And so we carefully looked at every one of them to figure out how to put Humpty Dumpty back together again.
Randy Gregg is executive director of the Portland Parks Foundation. This week, he shared results from their feasibility study and cost estimates. They found 18 pieces of the fountain. The ones pictured in orange need to be rebuilt. Add to that seismic upgrades and a new pump. Estimated cost, $1.2 million. The city also wants to improve access and safety around the fountain.
Right now, the only thing protecting you from the traffic is stripes.
Estimated cost for that, $670,000. Total, nearly $2 million, and about 6 months to complete.
This is a great public space, and we just want to make it the best we possibly can.
But who's paying? The city's arts program manager tells us the fountain is insured for $973,000. And the Portland Parks Foundation is accepting public donations.
We feel like it's a good opportunity for crowdfunding.
Later this year, City Council could decide what part of the cost, if any, taxpayers would cover. Last spring, they adopted a resolution to restore and improve the fountain. Some even wore antlers.
This monument is uplifting.
I don't really see how necessary it is to spend that much money on putting it back. Even if they were able to raise the money, maybe if insurance was covering it 100%.
I think history is important, and that's a pretty beautiful fountain with an elk and running water and stuff. I was how could you not want that back?
The Thompson Elk Fountain is named for former Portland Mayor David P. Thompson. In 1900, he commissioned the now historic landmark to honor the Oregon Humane Society, which he co-founded. Over 120 years, historians recorded about 30 major protests at the Elk Fountain. So what made those in 2020 so different? Well, for one, the basins were empty. Because of COVID, the city had shut down all the fountains, so fires set here caused damage that had never been done before.
We think the best insurance policy against that kind of vandalism is to have water in the fountains. And then also, there will be some, graffiti treatment for it, so graffiti can be easily removed.
A plan like no other to lead this elk back to water. In downtown Portland, Catherine Cook, KGW News.
That'll be good to have it back. All right, keep sending your questions and comments to thestory@kgw.com. We'll wrap things up right after this.
Chris, check.
That's the end of our show. I hope you have a great weekend. And remember, the story, our story, well, that never